Y'all look great. The wind didn't even mess up your hair today. That's good stuff, huh? Your hair wasn't messed up either back there. You're okay. Some days that wind blows pretty good. I wanted to talk about what we practice. So, does anybody in here sew? Do you remember way back? No, I didn't see one young person raise their hand. What's the deal? There, thank you. Yeah, thank God, huh? I'm really glad you did. Do you remember way back when you started sewing? You were like really good at it, right? How about crocheting? Any of you crochet or knit? What'd your first project look like? You framed it, right? And you like showed everybody how great it was. How about you guys that played sports? Did you like, when you started, anybody in track? I hated track. I didn't do track. So it was like running was not my forte. But I played football and I had to learn how to run right. And it's like the laps were killers. That was the worst. I loved hitting people. I just didn't like running. But I started in 8th grade or whatever, or 6th grade. I don't know. There was 120 people in our school. That was it. That was the high school. That was 120. St. Mary's Academy. But we had to practice, right? We had to practice. And so the question was, what did you think about on the way to church this morning as you're driving home? Sometimes we would drive. When we lived in Kansas, we would drive like 45 minutes to church. And some of the conversations weren't good conversations on the way to church. And some of the conversations after church were even worse. And so it was like, watch out. But life takes practice, and we have to spend time practicing on something, right? If you're crocheting. How about you guys when you first started putting makeup on you ladies? I was like, Mona Lisa. And you're all gorgeous now, but it took time to practice to figure out what colors and all the stuff that you loved and that made you look the best, right? And all those things. And we spend time practicing on stuff that's all on the natural. How much time do we spend practicing on our spiritual life? Lifting weights, how about that? A lot of practice, right? A lot of strength conditioning. Where's your spiritual strength? We practice. Here's the deal. The things that we really enjoy or want to excel at, we practice at. I want to sit at your feet, drink from the cup in your hand. Oh my gosh. So we come back to the question, what do we talk about on the way to church today or think about? We practice everything that we want to excel at. When I started building, it's amazing. When I started building, it was a fort, okay? It was a fort. And we tore it apart and rebuilt it and tore it apart and rebuilt it and tore it apart and rebuilt it. Finally, it was 2 stories. It took up the whole back patio. And the tax assessor in our town wanted to assess my dad for the extra room on his house. And it became a laugh for the whole town because it was a kid's fort, right? It was like, oh my gosh. And the tax assessor's hungry for money. But the thing was a mess. It didn't fall apart. We had to tear it apart, but it was a mess. I mean, it looked horrible. I had to practice to learn how to build a little bit better. Well, we spent time at Abel when you started welding, right? Your welds were like perfect from the beginning. No. And so we spend time so that we can excel at our jobs, we can excel at how we look, we can excel at our sport or whatever we're participating in, and we spend tons of time practicing to be Christ-like, right? That's where our trouble is. We want to not be overwhelmed with the world, but we've practiced. You realize we practice at worrying? You don't, yeah. We practice at unforgiveness. How could that be? We practice at anger and response or reaction. I still practice that sometimes. Just don't ask Charlie or my wife. And yet we're striving for peace and joy and fullness in life. How much time do we practice that? Heard a guy say he practices his peace all the time. It's like, what does that mean? What does it mean to practice peace? It means when you have the opportunity to not be at peace, you have to practice. And even when it's going all cool and good and happiness, and if you're not ready for the time when the disaster or when the thing happens in your life that steals our peace, if we're not ready, guess what happens? We haven't practiced or learned to be good at peace, so we don't hold our peace when we have the opportunity to lose it. How intentional are we in our walk with God? We think we're intentional, but yet we don't practice the things that will make us firm, bring us into a firm foundation with Him. We learn the restrictions, right? Hey, don't cuss, don't drink, don't smoke, don't cheat on your wife, don't. We know the don'ts. So we're good at the law. Do you know what the law is good for? The law is good, don't get me wrong, but the law is pinpointing at one part of you, not the whole part of you. It's pointing at your flesh. And so we spend a lot of time practicing the 10 Commandments or the 666 commandments or however many there are. We practice those because why? Why do we have such a tendency to follow practicing the law when we stepped into a covenant of grace and mercy? Why do we? Don't we all practice the law? We try. We don't fulfill it, but that was the trick with the law. That was the concept of the law. God sent the law, the commandments, to show you that it's incapable of you without Christ or without the gift of grace and mercy to follow all the law. You can't do it. Because none of you ever spoke back to your parents, right? Ever in your life. You were guilty of the whole law just because of that one thing. Now, where was your forgiveness? Did you kill a pigeon or a goat or a sheep or a cow? See, even doing that postponed the judgment, didn't remove the judgment. It postponed it until the time of Christ. Christ removed it. So we tend to follow the things that work where we can follow something. We're comfortable working in our flesh. We're comfortable in the program of how we think in the world in our flesh. And so the law fits right in with that. And so we think we're fulfilling a deeper walk with God by obeying the commandments. But yet we miss the promises of peace. You can walk in peace all the time. Anybody in here do that? I'm not raising my hand even. Anybody got fullness of joy, like it's overflowing, and everywhere you go, everybody just sees nothing but smiles, and like they don't tell you, hey, quit faking it. They say, wow, what's going on? How come it's so different for you? This Christian walk, this thing of this Christian walk, the place, the concept of who we are, not just the concept, but who we have become, it's real. It's a real thing. Did anybody get the manual? I mean, this is obviously a book, but who understands the whole thing? The Holy Spirit. I don't want to see. Here's the deal. Jesus gave us a way to walk into fullness without our effort. Fullness comes in rest. But I'm looking for fullness by working 80 hours a week. At least I did. No, I still do, excuse me. I'm not looking for fullness the same way I did. Okay, because my idea of fullness when I was younger was wealth. Stability with money, not stability with God. And so we take the natural concepts that we think and how we were trained. Where did you learn worry? You learned it from your parents, probably. Or you picked it up from people, your peers. Where'd you learn on forgiveness? The same way. Where do you learn peace? Where do you learn peace? Where do you learn joy that is overflowing? When's the last time you practiced the favor of God in your life? He's promised favor. Why is there favor of God in your life? Because something needs to counteract the enemy that is continuing to try to trip you up and destroy you. But God's favor is much, much greater than that. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, he didn't introduce principles that were impossible. What he introduced was a different way to live so that you could live in fullness. And he gave them things like do you want to be spiritually prosperous or happy? Do you want to be refreshed and forgiven? Do you want to have inward peace, secure and worthy of respect? Do you want to be nourished and joyful? Who doesn't want those things? None of you, I guess. It's like you're just like, isn't that the stuff we want? That's the things we want in life that bring meaning to life, but we're looking for meaning in the natural rather than in the spiritual. And in the natural, there's the ups and there's the downs. In the spiritual, it's a progression that continues to help you through the ups and downs of life so that you can walk in the fullness of joy all the time. We had that little deal on the board last week, right? And all the stuff outside. The stuff to come in, and I almost presented it like it's impossible to get into that center, but it's not impossible because it's a gift from God. We just have to learn how to step into this place of rest and stillness so that we can hear Him to overcome the things in our life. None of you have habits like I do, I know. No, we all do. We all have habits. We all have flaws. We all do it. And the thing that we hate is the thing we focus on, and the thing that we focus on is the thing that keeps growing. And so we keep trying to take care of it. But if we're working on it in the natural, it never brings the full change. Where in the spiritual, if we step into the fullness of the gift of grace and mercy in Jesus, then we walk in total healing from it. How can that be? Which do you want? We tend to choose anger management instead. Why is it that we do that? Who are we in Christ? What were you good at? What were you good at? Oh, come on, don't tell me nothing. You guys are a bunch of, don't do that. What are you good at? Come on, I know I can get some answers from you. Welding. Which is good. What was that good? He was giving me an answer. He's the only one who would answer me, whoever had that phone going. Yeah. We all strive to be good at something. And we think that how... Listen, I don't want you to get confused or bring confusion into this, but I want to prove a point is we try to become good using the principles of God in the natural. And we should. It's okay. But we don't use those same principles that God has to become good at being a son or a daughter of God. We think that being good at our business or being the good neighbor or being this fulfills the whole thing, and that's part of it. But the whole thing comes from not just being good, but being full. And out of my fullness, I become irresistible. Not me, but him. Out of my fullness. Could that be? How full are you? We walk with excitement, we walk with purpose at times, but how much of our purpose is focused on becoming the best daughter of God or son of God? We work on aspects of our flawed person. We all work on those. Because we can be better. But the reality is that he made you whole and perfect. We think, we think we're unholy because we have flaws. Do you want to hear the truth? You don't want to hear the truth. Okay. You are already holy because of him. It has nothing to do with you. And so the battle then, where's the battle? It's here. And our mind knows how to control, well, isn't really great at controlling the natural, but we think, or it thinks it's great or the best thing you have going at controlling the natural, and we're trying to walk in this spiritual walk, trying to figure out how to please God. And how to walk in fullness. And our mind keeps butting into the thing and changing things around. And so we keep coming back to the things that brought us some stability in the natural, but don't bring us fulfillment and actually a solid rock to stand on. It's the spiritual that overwhelms the natural. And so are we three parts, spirit, soul, and body? Yes. This is yes. This is no. Then I'll know if I have to teach on that. If you give me a no, it's okay. Which do you feed the most? That's the one that controls you. Which do you want to control you? We all want the spiritual realm to control us. But yet, without practice, we're not good at following the Spirit. We hear God's voice, and so I'll just use me. I hear God's voice to do this or do that or say something, and it's like, if I have enough boldness that day, it's okay. If it goes against the path that I've already chosen to go on, then I don't do it. Now, how can that be? I'm a pastor. Because I'm still learning too. I just want you to encourage, how do we get to the things that we want, all the things, right? So, if you want to be prosperous and happy, you have to come to God knowing that you need to come to God, and He's the only answer. If you want to be refreshed, you have to actually not just mourn, but change. And then refreshing comes. We're all sorry for our past. But sometimes we just don't change our past because the habits and the things that we're good at, our habits, take us back into what we practice. We want to be inwardly peaceful, yes, please. Secure and worthy of respect. How do we do that? You know how Jesus told us how to do it? This is what will change the world: gentleness. Not reprisal. Gentleness. But not timidity in gentleness. Gentleness in love. Want to be joyful and nourished by God's goodness. Man, that's good. Hunger and thirst for righteousness. How do we get righteousness? By changing the way I think. Now listen, I'm not saying live all week for the devil, or live 2 hours for the devil and then spend 2 hours or 5 hours for God. It's like, get your relationship so solid with God that it isn't worth the devil to come in, even in. I wrote one in here. Let's see if I can get that. It says, His favor is always bigger at anything the enemy brings to your door. And then I wrote in big letters, it says, don't open the door. Don't open the door. How do I not open the door? His strength. Change the way I think. How many doors do I open just in my mind that allow the enemy to come in with doubt, or reprisal, or unforgiveness, or anger? That all happens in my mind before I speak a word, right? It's like, and it depends on who's strong enough that day. That's what comes out of my mouth. Content and sheltered by God's promises. Be merciful or selfless. Wow. Spiritually mature. Wow. Help us, Lord. No, just help me. You guys are okay. Just live life different. Yep. We have to live a spiritual life rather than one that's intermingled. It's impossible for you to be so spiritually minded that you're no earthly good. That's impossible. That's exactly what we need. That's exactly what the world needs. What would your life be like if you were just too spiritually minded? Well, you might not live with regret. You might not live with doubt. You might not live with fear if you're totally spiritually minded. Is it worth it? Yeah, it is, of course. But do we? We're working at it. It's not the problem. It's the change that needs to happen in us, right? They are overwhelming, yes. And they actually are opposite of what brings us true fulfillment. Jesus said it this way. He said, you have heard it said, you've been taught in the world, but then Jesus is saying to you today, he's saying, but I say to you now. Just don't think that if you haven't murdered, you're okay. Don't call your brother a fool, because then you're in judgment. He's not saying those things so that we look at it and think it from an impossibility. What he's trying to show you is that there's a possibility in doing it his way. You don't ever have to call anybody a fool. Why? How do you get there? How do we get there? By receiving and believing and overcoming this in our natural thought process, because you can't do this covenant from here. You have to do this covenant from here, spiritually. Can you do it? Here, we'll go short today. Maybe. It might work. Might not. Ephesians 3:16. And I pray that he would unveil within you the unlimited riches of his glory and favor until supernatural strength floods your innermost being with his divine might and explosive power. We got that. Well, spiritual reality is, you have this. Why don't we walk in it? Like the guy with the demonic boy. Lord, I believe, but please, Jesus, help my unbelief. Is this a promise from God? And I pray that he would unveil within you the unlimited riches of his glory. How do we get past the place of thinking from a limited perspective into an unlimited perspective? That's who you are. You have no limits. The unlimited riches of his glory and favor, that's what's on you, right? His glory and favor is on you. The same glory that we have, God, this is Jesus' prayer. The same glory that you have given me, I now give to them. Until supernatural strength floods your innermost being. Your innermost being. Supernatural strength is supposed to flood. How does it come? It's because we start to understand or grab a hold of or unveiled inside of us the unlimited riches of his glory and favor. His divine might and explosive power. That's what's supposed to be working through us. We're going through Acts on Thursday nights. We started going through Acts. We're in, 4 or something. Some crazy stuff is happening. But that was only in the first century, right? That's only happened for the first century church, not the 21st or 22nd century church. Of course. Was it supposed to be changed? Was that just the carrot on the string where the church saw what could happen but it'll never happen again? It's like, no. The church had a representation. The first exposure of the church was the way the church was supposed to be from then on. And what happens is that it gets milked down and watered down by man's wisdom, and we fall away from our reliance on God. 17. Then by constantly using your faith, what do you believe for? What are you using your faith for? By constantly using your faith, the life of Christ will be released deep inside of you, and the resting place of his love will become the very source and root of your life. How much does Jesus love you? Is that the source and the root, the foundation of your life, the love of Christ? Is that what it is? Or is it, can I just pick on me? It's okay. It's easier for me to pick on me than anybody else. I kind of lose my perspective when I have a fight with my wife. And then I'm kind of wondering about the love of Christ. Is it really the root and the foundation of my life? Because this is overwhelming, but I want to be overwhelmed from him. And whatever it is, the circumstances happening in your life, and I hope you don't, you guys have just the perfect marriages. I want you all to have that. That's good. That's a good thing. I want your life to be full, but the thing is that we keep letting the natural interrupt the fullness that God has already implanted inside of us. Verse 18. Then you will be empowered to discover what every Holy One experiences, the great magnitude of the astonishing love of Christ in all its dimensions. How deeply intimate and far-reaching is his love. What are the things? So we live life with our mask because we don't want people to see. You don't live with a mask, okay. No. We live with a mask because we don't want people to see certain imperfections in my character or pain. And so we live life with a mask. I'll let you see what I want you to see. And then I leave church, I get in my car, and I blow up because I've lived with the mask. So do you take the mask into your prayer life with God? Because we have a habit. It's a natural habit. Because you wouldn't love me if you really saw me. That's not how I think, but that's how we sometimes think. If you saw this imperfection, you'd never let me be pastor. Or whatever. You'd never let me weld for you ever again. Or whatever. I'd be fired from my job. Or I'd my wife wouldn't want me. Or what, you understand? So we wear this mask because we feel that if you really saw me, you wouldn't want me. And it becomes the habit of our life. But that, I'm telling you, that habit interrupts or interferes in your spiritual walk because you still wear the mask, because your flesh and your mind control it, and they put it in front of you in your relationship with God, and you can never become intimate. And so we keep striving for peace, but we never become intimate enough to see that we really do deserve peace. Not because of what I did, because of what he did. Do you think he doesn't know all my imperfections? Oh my gosh. We have to change our relationship, our idea of our relationship with God, because it's completely beyond our scope of how we do life in the world. How deeply intimate and far-reaching is his love. How enduring and inclusive. Isn't that how we do life, right? We have so much love inside of us, we don't form cliques. We always hang around people that we hate and that drive us crazy. Those are the ones we seek out, right? No, we hang with the people that we're comfortable with and that we feel like we knit together. And so we don't step out of it. How inclusive is our love? Now, how we handle that is we have different levels of love. And the ones that we're most comfortable with, those are the ones we love the most. And the ones we're uncomfortable with, we love them, but we love them at a different level. Is that how Jesus works? He loves all. How do we get to that place of love? We can't do it in the natural. It's beyond our conception in the natural to love like Christ did. We only can do that if we get transformed in intimacy with him, to start to understand that it doesn't matter how big I am, how stupid I am, how many words I misspell or what I misspeak or whatever I do during the day doesn't change his love for me. And all the quirks and the stupid stuff in my life, he doesn't even get upset with them. Guess who does? See, there's a deeper place in this that we have to figure out how to get to. We don't have to figure out how to get to. We have to figure out how to receive it so that we step into it. Because it has nothing to do with you and your flaws. It has everything to do with the perfectness of the sacrifice that Jesus paid on Calvary. And God said his stamp of approval on resurrection and said, you're justified now. You are justified. I can live in you. And so you know who the most patient person is, the most patient being in the world, in the universe? It's God. It's obviously God, because he just waits and waits. He's tied up inside of me, waiting for me to change and start to understand who I am, and that actually he loves me so much it doesn't matter what else happens in the world, because he loves me so much he'll take me through no matter what is happening in my life. And if I would get that concept in my heart that would overwhelm this thing on the top, my mind, if it overwhelmed me, I would live completely different. And the circumstances, the ups and downs that happen in life wouldn't change my walk, my conception, my thought process. It wouldn't change who I know I am in Christ, because this runs me, not this. And when I'm run by this, then guess what? I'm walking in fullness. I'm walking in peace. I'm walking in joy. I'm walking in the favor of God. I don't ever outwalk the favor of God. I just don't receive it. His favor never leaves me. Doesn't leave you. But we don't believe that what we've done deserves the favor of God in our life, and so we walk away from the favor, and the favor can't rest on us. Do you want to be an overcomer? This is how you do it. This is how you get there. It's not by your works. It's not by your obeying the law. It's by your belief and who you feed. Your heart, your spirit. And if you feed this, your spirit life, then you'll be completely a different person. And then, Charlie, maybe I'd never have to blow up again at a 2x4 that's crooked. You know, the insignificant things, they just don't matter so much, but yet they're the ones that trip me up. Blow the engine in the car. It's like, we'll take care of it. Have to go get a tire fixed because I got a nail in the tire? Oh my God, it's the end of the world. I don't know why it is that way, but isn't it crazy? Let's see if we can finish this. How enduring and inclusive it is. Endless love beyond measurement. It transcends our understanding. It really does. It transcends our understanding. We can't comprehend it because we're thinking from a natural perspective rather than a spiritual perspective from Him. This extravagant love pours into you until you are filled to overflowing with what? The fullness of God. And that's where fullness comes from. What brings you fulfillment? Listen, completing a project brings me fulfillment in the natural. And it makes me feel really great. It really does. And I can celebrate in that. But then I start the next project, and I run into trouble. And I've lost all my fulfillment. Because I've forgotten the past, and I've accepted the new present, And all the fulfillment of having a job well done disappeared because I'm having a terrible time with this project. Do you think he would do that to us? Or maybe he's just trying to teach me something. And in all those ups and downs of the projects we have in life, some are good, some are easy, some are horrible, and some are very, very difficult. And it depends on the project that we're in at the time of who I think I am and the capability I have in him. But yet, from his perspective, who I am in him never changed. The capability I have in him never changed. It's just in my perspective of what's happening at the moment. And it changes my life because of how I think. But he didn't change. And no matter the difficulty or the easiness of the project in my life, he's still with me, and he has all the answers. When they're easy, I just think I have enough smarts that I can get through it. And so he comes along and he says, hey, okay, get through this one. Get through this one. The challenges are different. They're beyond me. Why? Because he wants to show me who I really am. I'm way beyond who I think I am. And so I have to leave my comfort to expand into what he has going on in my life. But I don't have to be educated in it. I just have to have belief in it that he'll do it. And that's why I didn't get in the ministry for 20 years. No, I don't. But that's what brings us a hesitancy in moving into what God's calling and gifting is in our life. If it's God, you can't do it on your own. If he's put it in your heart, it's impossible for you to accomplish it without him. That's how he sets it up. We want peace, yes? All of us. We can't get peace apart from him. So we find temporary peace and we celebrate in the temporary, but he's given us peace that passes all understanding. Not the peace the world has. It's peace that takes me through the storm, peace that takes me through the disaster, peace that takes me through the success. It doesn't change. That's what I want you to get today. I want you to understand it has nothing to do with you except your belief and your reasoning inside of you that brings you into the fullness of God. Actually, what brings you faster into the fullness of God is that if you just come into stillness, don't quit working, you quit trying to work for your peace, you receive your peace. Peace is in Christ. It's only in Christ. Amen. Spiritual peace is. All right, does that make sense? All right. The fruits of the Spirit, right? What does it say after the fruits of the Spirit? Yeah. There's no law. They are meant to be limitless. Nothing can control you if you walk in the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, gentleness, goodness, kindness, long-suffering, whatever. Patience, that would be patience, long-suffering. Self-control, or actually lordship or spiritual control. You want to have an unlimited amount of the favor of God? You want to have an unlimited amount of freedom? I told you I was going to quit. Are you okay? I went another 10 minutes. Oh my gosh. What do you think the freedom is that he gave us? It's the freedom of the doubt and the past, the freedom of the guilt of sin. It's the guilt of our past that we drag into our future that continues to put the limits on us and how we think we can respond to God and how we can respond to the world. You ain't who you used to be, and you shouldn't be. And we keep getting closer and closer to the image that he sees us as than we ever have been. And so Jesus did it in that Sermon on the Mount. He put principles on. If you're thinking from the natural, it's impossible. If you're thinking that you want to change and that God is big enough, then you can do all the stuff that was in the Sermon on the Mount. You can actually turn the other cheek. You can actually be in the presence of people that just insult you and not get offended. Do you see? That's who we are. That's not who we can be. That's who we are because Christ is in me. I just don't live the fullness of Christ in me. So the more I seek him, the more I find him. The guy today, he must have read my mind what I was going to teach today. The more I find him, the more I love him. And the more I change. And the stronger I get in him. And eventually, I'll get so close to him that nothing you do, or they do, or the world brings, or the enemy tries to bring into my life, will change me. Whew, let's get there. Let's get there. Let's do it. Let's do it. There's nothing more important. We think it'd be wrong, but yet we live our life because we're so focused on ourselves. We're looking for peace at the expense of anything else. And yet, peace doesn't come at the expense of others. It comes at my surrender to him. All right. Father, thank you so much for this day. We thank you for what you're doing in our hearts and in our lives. We thank you for that. We thank you for that gift of you. Help us to see the enormity of it so that we can base our judgments and our thought processes on our life with you, on our future with you, because it is limitless in you. We're the only thing holding it back. Continue to work with us. Continue to bring the challenges that bring change into our life and more dependency onto you. Continue to keep our hearts soft and help us as we start to put barriers up. Help us to see them so that we can knock them down, so that you can come in and plow and change and mold us and take us into that place you have for us. We surrender to you today. Be more for us and help us to get there. Help us to step one step at a time and to get unstuck from the places where we're stuck, because we want your fullness. In Jesus'